Hello and welcome. My name is Nikolai. I'm a DVM and PhD from Denmark. I'm working as a project manager of the Danish reduction strategy, and my employee is the Danish Agriculture and Food Council. Before watching the video, please subscribe to 돈플래너 TV, like the video and turn on the notifications. And now I will give you a further description on the Danish PRRS reduction strategy. So the background behind why we actually are doing this very large program. First of all, we like to have a better economy for the farmers. That means we need to have fewer economic fluctuations for sow herds when they get infected by PRRS. We also want to lower the risk of PRRS recombination into more virulent variants. On top of that, we like to reduce the use of MLV vaccines to reduce the risk of these recombination, but also to save money for the farmers. And we need to reduce the risk of a recombination of these vaccine strains. And we had a case back in 2019 where 2 MLV vaccines made a new recombined variant that spread through Borstot. So to achieve all these things, actually what you need is some area control and some eradication initiatives if you want to succeed with all this. And why can we do this in Denmark? Well, as I tried to explain, we have some very good conditions to do this. First of all, we have a field-tested health control system, the SPF system, which has been in place for more than 40 years. We have access to PRRS-free breeding stock, which is essential if you want to do eradication of sow herds. You need to have some PRRS-free breeding stock. To control all, you need to have some good data systems. And in Denmark, we have a health, we have a trade, and we have geographical position of herds. So all these information you combined, so we know where the pigs are, we know the health status of these pigs, and we know the trade patterns between the farms. In Denmark, we are a country of islands. There's a lot of water around our country, and that means we have a limited risk of airborne transmission for neighboring countries. We have the border to Germany, which we are trying to control, but otherwise we don't have the risk of getting any infection from our neighboring countries. Another important thing is that we have extensive professional knowledge on how to control PRRS at herd level and how to eradicate it. The Danish pig veterinarians has been working with this disease for 30 years and we know how to handle it, and therefore we have some good professional advice at the farms. So it's been around, PRRS 1 and type 2, since the 90s, and actually we have tried to have some eradication. National eradication has been discussed in Denmark ever since, but until now has it been possible to get it started. So what happened? Well, back in 2022, 4 different stakeholders went together and formed a new strategy for reduction of PRRS in Denmark. It was developed in the collaboration between the Pig Farmers Association, between the Veterinarians Association, between our veterinary authorities and the processors, the Association of Swine Slaughterhouses. The main purpose of this strategy is to improve the health of the Danish pigs. We like to reduce the amount of antibiotic use and improve the welfare. And we need to prevent the negative impact on the production by having less PRRS in the pig. When we started, we got formed some targets of this strategy. We have 2 targets that we are following. First of all, we are measuring the proportion of finishers declared zero negative of PRRS at slaughter. When we started this whole program, only 25% of our finishers had this status, and the goal is this year in 2026 we need to have 75% of all the finishers being negative of PRRS. The second goal is we are measuring the proportion of sow herds being declared zero negative of PRRS. When we started, only 58% of our sow herd had a negative PRRS status, and the goal is to reach 85%. To make it all run, we had our Danish Veterinary Association and Food Administration to make some new rules of PRRS. First of all, the first phase was a mandatory serological PRRS status of all pig herds with more than 10 sows or 100 finishers. At that time, it was approximately 4,500 herds. That means that instead of having a voluntary system as the SPF system, now it was mandatory. So all the herds need to be tested once a year. You had to do blood samples for these farms and get a PRRS status. On top of that, there was a monthly clinical surveillance by the herd veterinarian in all seropositive herds. And if there was any clinical sign of PRRS, the veterinarians are obligated to take blood samples for PCR testing. The pig slaughter companies, on top of that, has introduced a deduction in the price of the pork when you get slaughter, meaning you have a lower price if you have a come from a farm with a positive PCR, PRRS PCR positive farm. The second phase, which we're expecting to be in place this year, is that we're going to have a virological surveillance, meaning we're going to be blood testing all the seropositive finisher herd and test them for PCR. We're also going to have limitation of movement of PRRS positive pigs in Denmark, and we're going to have a differentiated monitoring system by region for PRRS status. Just to make it more clear how this system is working. So we have this antibody declaration. It's a mandatory system, so all these farms are being tested once a year. If you have a negative blood sample, you have the green pig, then you can just deliver pigs without any further measures. If you have an antibody positive sample, then you go into the other system, and every month the veterinarian needs to look for clinical signs. And it's mandatory for all these finisher herds to be tested for that. And the next thing is coming in here is that we're going to have a virus declaration, meaning that these positive farms, they need to be tested by PCR, and if they're positive of PCR, then there's going to be a deduction in the price of the slaughter pig. And that is the main incentive for all the farmers. They don't want to experience a deduction in the price, so they want to go and get free of PRRS, and that's why we can move them. What we expect when we started all this was that we want to put economic pressure on these seropositive finisher herds by giving them mandatory visits by the vet and the risk of deduction of slaughter. That would make them go for having a seronegative piglet instead. So the demand of the seronegative piglet will increase, and thereby the price will increase. When you look at the sow herds, because there is a higher financial gain for sow herd to have a negative than positive PRRS, then they will go for eradication. And for all that to work, you need to have pig producers and veterinarians to work locally to control and eradicate PRRS at the regional level. That was our expectations when we had these new rules coming in. So that was the whole system. That was the new rules. That was what we put in place. So what has actually been initiated on top of that? Well, we got the new rules, and we start drawing the maps and starting to map where do we have PRRS in Denmark. You can see on this picture, this map of Denmark, that in the red areas, the prevalence of PRRS positive farms is higher than compared to the green areas. And there's mostly in the western part of Denmark that we have these red areas, and therefore we like to push PRRS out of these low prevalent regions, like the green regions in the eastern part of Denmark. On top of that, we established some PRRS eradication programs in these high prevalent regions. We appointed some local PRRS leaders, and we paid them money by a financial model that was supported by the Danish Pig Levy Fund. So to speak, it was like sort of a very big elephant, and we tried to cut it down in one bite at a time. We had a very strong organization. What we're trying to do is to secure that everybody in our system is actually feeling ownership of this reduction program. So on a national level, that's where I'm working, the Danish Agriculture and Food Council. We have the overall responsibility of the whole program, and we appoint local leaders and make sure to have everything in control. On a regional level, we have appointed some pig advisory consultants that knows the area, that knows the farmers, and they have the responsibility to coordinate the PRRS reduction in this region. Within each region, we make smaller districts, and in each district we have appointed some veterinary practitioners which also have local knowledge of the farmers, and they are doing the coordination between the other veterinarians that are working in this area. We also try to describe how to actually achieve a regional eradication program. First of all, we try to gain the overview of the PRRS situation in the region. On the picture that you see here, every dot is a pig farm. The color of the pig farm, the color of the circle is the status of PRRS, red meaning positive, yellow meaning on eradication, and green meaning free of PRRS. The size of the circle is the amount of pigs that are within each herd, so the bigger the circle, the bigger farm it is. So you need to gain an overview of this region and then start working with reducing PRRS circulation in every herd. You have to stabilize the sow herds, and whenever you have a stabilized situation for all sow herds, you can go and try to have a negative weaner flows in the region. When that is achieved, you can start emptying the finisher sites of seropositive finishers and then start loading them with negative weaners. Then you can go for a negative PRRS status of the sow herds, and when that is achieved, then the whole region could be declared free of PRRS. Another thing that we established together with the veterinarians was to have precise categorization of sow herds according to their PRRS status. So what we have here is 5 categories. We have the unknown category, which is of course if you don't have established anything about the PRRS status in the sow herd. You have category 1, what we call antibody positive but with virus circulation. So when you go test these farms, they will be both ELISA and PCR positive at the time. Category 2, that is when they are antibody positive but no virus is circulating anymore. We call it a stable sow herd where you can actually wean negative piglets. So when you go test them, you could have ELISA positive samples, but it should be PCR negative. The next category is category 3, what we call under elimination. That means that you have been sending in sentinels in the sow herd and you test them for antibodies and they are negative. So the samples that you're testing here will be ELISA negative and PCR negative. And then at the end, when you have been doing the eradication, you will have a category 4, meaning PRRS negative, ELISA negative and PCR negative. This category is very much inspired by the ASV classification system, but has been modified into the Danish system. When we do our stabilization of our sow herds in Denmark, we use these recommendations that has been developed in the US. So we don't do anything extra, we're just implementing what we already know. We nearly always use this LCH method, the load, close and modernize. We close the herds for at least 210 days, stop introduction of gilts. We do a mass vaccination with MLVs in Denmark. We do not use LVI. It's not legal in Denmark to use LVI, so that has never been done. So we use the MLV vaccines to do the homogenization, and then we implement the MAC-REBEL procedures in the farrowing unit. And then we start doing some sort of surveillance by PCR, either by processing fluids, tongue fluids or oral fluids or whatever works in each farm. Some recommendations that we have from Denmark when we're doing the stabilization of the sow herds. Well, because we have these high-producing sow herds, we wean a lot of piglets and it can be difficult to have some control of the virus. So when we start doing elimination, we actually recommend that you reduce your production for a period for at least 10%, meaning you have to inseminate fewer sows in the period to make sure you actually have room to do these measures in your system. We also recommend that you don't use homebred gilts. You need to buy in the gilts so you know the status of these gilts all the time. We highly recommend that you use these gilt quarantine units. You need to isolate the gilts for at least 12 weeks when you use the MLV vaccines. And we recommend that you actually vaccinate them twice in the gilt quarantine before introducing them into the sow herd. When you do the elimination or eradication program in the sow herd, you need to empty the nursery and weaner unit off-site. But if you're not possible to do that, we recommend that you keep 1 or 2 empty sections between these infected and uninfected weaners to achieve elimination. Okay, so that was sort of what we have initiated. Here are some examples of some of the digital tools that we also have developed to help farmers and veterinarians work with elimination at the regional level. What we develop here is what we call a dynamic PRRS map. It's daily updated. It's based on actual CSR data, meaning the position of the herd and the size of the herd and all that is on the map every day. And we also color these dots by the health status of PRRS for every herd every day. We have made it accessible to all the key stakeholders in Denmark so they can use it as a tool for eradication. It's very important and it's been used every day in these area eradication programs to make sure that the decisions that are being made in these programs are made on informed and data-driven foundations. So this is a very important tool and we are keeping development with new features in this program. Just to get more examples on what we actually are, what type of information that we are sharing. So on each region we can have an overview on the number of farms in that region, how many sows, how many finishers, the PRRS prevalence and stuff like that. We also have information on the local leader. In this region I show here, the local leader, it says it's Pernille, and you can contact her and she should know everything about what's going on in that region. On each herd here, you can also have information An example here is just the number of the herd, the owner of the herd, the address of the herd, and the PRRS status. This is a sow herd that is positive of PRRS type 2. There's also information on the size of the sow herd. This one here has 800 sows and it has 6,000 wiener sites in this farm. These information is available for everybody in the region. Here is the map for trade, so we also can gain this information. So every dot is connected with another dot, meaning they are trading with each other. So we know in the region where is the pigs being moved from, and we know the status of these pigs coming into the region. And again, we are sharing this information for everybody who is interested in it, all the key stakeholders. So now you got an introduction to what we initiated, all the rules, and also some of the tools that has been developed. And now I'll give a status on what we actually have achieved since we started in 2022. Thank you for your attention.